Mars, the red planet that we study, photograph, explore, and at the same time hide from ourselves, from others, from history. In public space, it exists as a dead desert. But even a dead desert can be a cemetery, and in cemeteries, as we know, sometimes traces of those who are no longer there are preserved, sometimes even voices. Ask yourself a simple question. Why Mars? Why not Venus? Why not Europa, not Titan? Why have the world's largest space agencies been sending probes, rovers, and orbiters there for decades? Why do the largest corporations on the planet, from SpaceX to Lockheed Martin, dream not of the moon but of this very dust ball on which there is nothing? Or there is, because there is a suspicion that official science does not like to voice out loud. Mars is not just a planet. It may be the key to our past, to our origin, and even to why we are here. We've all seen those images. Faces in Cydonia, pyramids, hexagonal structures, weathered blocks that are too even, traces of rectangular symmetry that doesn't occur in nature, and almost always silence. No explanation except plays of light, optical illusion, random noise. But why does this noise always have geometric shapes? In 1976, the Viking 1 spacecraft captured the legendary image, a huge face on the surface of Mars, which was later called the Martian Sphinx. NASA immediately dismissed it. They said it was just a shadow, an awkward angle, a random shape. However, later other images showed that this face has proportions very close to human ones. Eyes, nose, lips, forehead. Is it really just a coincidence? What if it is a monument? The same probe also transmitted a photo of an even stranger place, the so-called Martian pyramids. A group of structures standing side by side on a flat surface, forming an almost perfect geometric figure. And again, no press conference, no analysis, just silence. And now, a little further. In 1971, Mariner 9 entered the orbit of Mars. For several days, a terrible dust storm enveloped the planet's surface. But when it settled, the first frame showed something that amazed even the technical team. Huge canyons, rocky walls, and among them, structures, unusually regular. Some of them looked like towers, others like domes. At the briefing, one of the cameramen, unable to stand it, muttered, "This is a city." The cameras were immediately turned off. There was no record left, at least in the NASA archives, officially. From that moment on, the topic of artificial structures on Mars became taboo. In the 80s, when independent researchers began to analyze the images posted in the public domain, it became obvious that some of the images had been edited, the contrast had been changed, some areas were blurred. In 1991, a group of researchers from Princeton proved that the chiaroscuro model of the face had been changed programmatically. The real image showed deeper contours, clear verticals. And here's the question, why? In parallel, in the USA, testimonies from former employees of NASA and related organizations began to appear. One of the most vocal was Richard Hoagland. He claimed that the US government had information about the artificial origin of part of the Martian terrain back in the 60s, that there was even a closed program under the codename Red Road, which studied the possibility of colonizing ancient ruins. Yes, ruins, not territories. Ruins. Later, even more shocking materials appeared. In 2007, a video about the Apollo 20 mission was leaked online. It was not in the public records. It is believed that after Apollo 17, all missions were canceled. But the author of the video, a former CIA employee, assured that Apollo 20 took place, and its goal was not the moon, but an object on the far side of the satellite. There, according to him, an alien ship was found, and also the body of a creature that looked very much like a human. It was called the monoliths. And here is the paradox. This video is still circulating on the internet, but no one has been able to prove that it is fake. As well as that, it is real. Suspended, silence, again, could these technologies, ships, structures, forms be not only on the moon but also on Mars? They could. And just as the news about the faces and pyramids is spreading, NASA is urgently changing its publication policy. The images are now being processed, some are being classified, some are being removed. And even if one of the employees starts talking, they quickly disappear from the public space. Some are literally. In 2014, a technician from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory fled to Canada after trying to release a series of images that he said showed structures resembling antenna towers. They were discovered by the Curiosity rover in the Mount Sharp area. He was found a few weeks later. He forgot who he was. Diagnosis, amnesia, too convenient. And there are dozens of such stories. And now, the most interesting thing, in 2021, Perseverance transmitted images in which enthusiastic researchers found what looks like a tunnel entrance, rectangular, carved into the rock. Similar to the entrances to underground cities in Cappadocia, it was analyzed for several days, then the photos were deleted. And the entire catalog of the Mars Raw Images archive on the official NASA website was temporarily disabled. Is this a coincidence? Google Mars is a tool created based on NASA images, allowing you to explore the surface of Mars as on Google Earth. But there too, many areas are blurred. Blurred or filled with white. Why? In space, there is no private property. What is there to hide? And the main question, why? The history of mankind is the history of selective memory. We remember what allows us to feel safe, we hide the rest. But perhaps we do not live on the first planet, and not even in the first civilization. And perhaps Mars is not an alien world, but ours. Real.
Some believe that we are immigrants, that once in prehistoric times our race lived on Mars, that a nuclear war or a cosmic catastrophe destroyed everything. Part of the population fled to the nearest similar planet, Earth. And now, tens of thousands of years later, we are returning, unconsciously. Genetic memory leads us back. This is no longer just a hypothesis. This is a search for ourselves. But if this is true, then the main question arises, who are we now? And why are those who know the answer silent? Mars is a planet of eternal silence. But sometimes, if you look closely, it begins to speak. Not with words, but with images. Sometimes so loudly that the boundaries between science and impossible are blurred. Thousands of images, terabytes of data, and among them are details that make us doubt everything we knew about space. Let's start with a picture that can be found in the official NASA archive. Sol 50 Curiosity rover. Dry red soil, rock fragments, and an object that resembles a doorway. Perfectly straight lines. A rectangle, about a meter wide. The walls are deep, as if the entrance to an artificial shelter. NASA instantly explained, this is natural erosion. But for some reason, it did not provide a single similar example of such erosion on Earth. And the most interesting thing is that within a week, this picture disappeared from the open catalog. Now you can only go there through archival mirrors. And now Sol 1448, Curiosity rover. On the rocks, an object resembling a lid. Aluminum, metal, its shape is round with perfect symmetry. Next to it, something resembling a screw. Yes, a screw, with a thread. Once again, on a dead planet, where, according to the official version, technology has never existed, and again, zero comments from NASA. And now let's look at the pictures from the Spirit mission, Sol 513. The camera captures something resembling part of a statue. Shoulder, profile, head. The proportions are not quite human. A longer face, a high forehead, empty eyes. But this is an object, made of a material that resembles stone, but has a different shade. The outline is clearly visible, the shadow is correct, This is not an illusion. This is not a coincidence. Another picture sold 735. Again, curiosity. Against the background of the red relief is an object that looks like a metal tube. It has a hole, a smooth structure, and looks as if it was once part of a complex mechanism. When it got online, NASA explained, possibly the remains of the rover's own drilling rig, but it was in a place where the device had not yet managed to reach. Coincidence? But the scariest thing is not what we see, but what is hidden. For example, blurring. The so-called blurring is a phenomenon when part of the image looks blurry, although the rest of the image is crystal clear. In images from HiRISE, the most powerful camera in orbit around Mars, there are dozens of such zones, rectangular spots where information seems to have been erased. Coincidence? Number? The geometry of the blurring is too precise, and always in those areas where there should have been structures that look like ruins. There is an archive known in narrow circles as the Mars Anomalies Database. It was created by independent researchers who have been analyzing official footage for years. They made an amazing discovery. In many images from the same point, the objects change. It is as if the same region was photographed several times, but then the objects were retouched. For example, the SO 1120 image has a pyramid-shaped structure. The SO 1121 image is from the same place, but it is no longer there, although the rocks around it are the same. One of the strangest cases is the Perseverance footage from 2022. There is a silhouette that looks like a figure in the shadow, vertical, thin, with a head and shoulders. The size is about 2 meters. NASA is silent, but independent engineers analyze the shadows. It falls as if the object is not part of the terrain, but stands on the surface. And here the most interesting thing begins. This figure was discovered in the images of opportunity, but in a different area of Mars. That is, either these are two identical objects, or it is moving. Starting in 2004, missions began to use 3D scanning technology of the terrain. But this data is not available to the general public. Only images. Only 2D. In 2016, a hacker group from Europe posted fragments of Martian 3D modeling. One of them shows clearly defined shapes that look like the remains of buildings. Arches, passages, straight walls, and even a round well. No, not a crater, a well. With a rim? What does all this mean? Are we being fooled? Are we being hidden? Are we being manipulated? There is a version that official science will never voice. NASA is just a facade. The real discoveries belong to the military and private corporations. Lockheed Martin, DARPA Rand Corporation, that's where the real data about Mars is stored. What we see is the version for the public. There is the so-called Red Vault project. It was first mentioned in leaked NSA documents. It talks about architectural anomalies on M-class planets. It is directly stated, structures of artificial origin. The date is 1992. The author is a division of the U.S. Space Command. These documents have not yet been confirmed, but not refuted either. Why is this important? Because since 2018, NASA has been changing its data submission policy. More and more images are delayed. Fewer and fewer are in full resolution. Some images are archived immediately after publication, and only certain groups of analysts have access to full telemetry. Imagine, among all the images from Curiosity and Perseverance over the past 10 years, more than 17,000 photos contain anomalous objects. Of these, more than 12,000 have not been publicly analyzed. No official report, no press release, just a photo and silence. Meanwhile, people are appearing on the internet who claim to have been to Mars. For example, Andrew Basiago is a lawyer who publicly stated that as a child he participated in the Pegasus project, an experiment to teleport to Mars. He describes the planet as a place with the remains of cities, tunnels, artifacts, and even talks about contact with life forms. He is accused of madness, but he still hasn't changed his version for over 20 years. And now another oddity. In 2019, a strange sign appears in the Perseverance photo. On the stone, a symbol resembling a spiral, as if carved. It was studied by image processing experts by It Is Not Digital Noise. it is a physical trace. Who made it? And most importantly, why is official science silent about all this? Sometimes it seems that we are all looking at the same sky, but we see different things. For some, Mars is just rocks. For others, it is memory, a buried past. Maybe ours, maybe someone else's, but definitely not dead. Because in all these pictures, blurs, fragments, dark spots, there is something more than just rocks. There is a story, and there is someone who does not want us to read it. Imagine that all the traces on the surface of Mars are just the tip of the iceberg, that the real secret is underneath, under the red dust, under the craters, under the layers of volcanic slag. Something more is hidden. Architecture, tunnels, cavities, and perhaps life. Let's start with the facts. In the 2010 the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter probe transmitted a series of images from the region of Arsha Mons, an extinct volcano. In its side slopes, cracks with a diameter of 30 to 100 meters were discovered. But not just cracks. These are openings with almost perfect edges leading down into complete darkness. They were called skylights, light windows. NASA admitted that most likely these are entrances to underground lava tunnels, but at a depth of hundreds of meters. And what is interesting is that the temperature in these tunnels is much more stable than on the surface. Minimal fluctuations, dryness, ideal conditions for preserving what? Ruins? Technologies? Or maybe someone? In 2018, a photo appeared from the Hebes Chasma area, a deep gorge near the Mariner Valley, and there is something impressive in this photo. A terrain with geometrically correct shapes, right angles, parallel lines, patterns resembling a city plan. Right at the bottom of the canyon is a section that seems to be carved out of concrete. NASA is silent about this, but geologists say such shapes could not have arisen naturally. This is either an artificial fortification or the remains of a very ancient structure. There is a photo that has long been discussed among ufologists, a frame from Mars Odyssey, 2001. In the Noctis Labyrinthus region, numerous long parallel channels are visible, stretching for tens of kilometers. But on one segment, perfect symmetry. 5 channels, the same distance between them, the same depth, and something like transport arches or entrances. Looks like a subway or a tunnel system. Not natural. Another frame. Sol 2000, 167, Curiosity. A small fragment of rock, but in it a hole with teeth, like ventilation. The feeling that this is part of the structure that comes to the surface from the depths, yes, maybe it's just a strange rock. But how to explain the fact that in the pictures from other days, this hole is no longer there, as if it was closed, or the frame was replaced. Mars is known to be a seismically stable planet, but more and more Marsquakes are being recorded. Some of them are local, concentrated in areas with suspicious geometries. It's like someone is moving inside, or something is working.
In 2021, the InSight mission recorded a series of low-frequency sounds coming from under the surface. The frequency is 4.2 hertz, uniform, repeatable, like a machine working in the depths. NASA did not give an explanation. They simply wrote anomalous seismic signals. But if it were on Earth, everyone would say it's technology. And here comes the main version that they are afraid to voice. There were civilizations on Mars, but not the ones we used to imagine. Not like ancient Rome or Egypt, and completely different ones underground. Resistant to radiation, with technologies that we do not understand. Perhaps it was one civilization, or perhaps several. Some lived in cities on the surface, others lived under it. It is known that on Earth there are many legends about red gods who came from the sky. In Mayan myths, the gods who brought knowledge had skin the color of sand. The Sumerians had the Anunnaki who came from Dougal, translated as fiery planet. Now remember what Mars looks like from the night sky. Like a red star, a ball of fire. Perhaps our myths are a memory about those who once flew from a neighboring planet. And now, an even darker theory. What if part of this civilization survived and still lives underground in a state of suspended animation? Or in the form of autonomous systems, machines, automatic sentries that are activated when a threat approaches? This theory is supported by a whole series of strange events. For example, NASA's refusal to land any device directly in the areas of the most strange anomalies. All Mars rovers are directed to neutral zones, where rocks, dust, craters, but they avoid Cydonia Mensae, the area where the photo shows a face, pyramids, and plateau. Why? Afraid? By the way, the face on Mars is a frame that flew around the world in 1976. A clear image of a giant head 2 kilometers long. NASA later stated that it was an illusion of light. But in 1998, they published the picture again already with higher resolution, and the face disappeared there. It seemed to have been smoothed out, but a comparative analysis showed that the photos were in different lighting, and in the original, the contours of the head were too symmetrical for the natural relief. There is another interesting fact. The American Mars Observer program, launched in 1992, disappeared a few days before entering Mars orbit. Complete loss of communication, no explanation. According to the official version, a possible explosion of the fuel system, but no one provided direct evidence. Some believe that the spacecraft approached something it shouldn't have seen, and here it is, worth mentioning another mission, ExoMars 2016. The European spacecraft Schiaparelli was supposed to land on the surface, but before landing, it disappeared. Later, debris was found, but with strange damage, as if from a directed energy pulse. Not just a fall, but as if it had been destroyed. Why do all Martian missions approaching suspicious regions either disappear or have problems? In 2022, analysts discovered another oddity. In NASA's official telemetry for Perseverance, there were days when not all frames were recorded. There are gaps of several hours when the photos are missing, and when reverse analysis showed that during these hours, the probe should have been in an area with a high level of magnetic interference. There, where the map shows the presence of subsurface anomalies, this leads to another, even more disturbing hypothesis that not only did civilization exist on Mars, but it could also have left something active behind, or even watching us. A former NASA employee who wished to remain anonymous said in 2020 that an object was seen moving in one of the Martian images. Not sand, not stones. Something that changed the coordinates between the two frames. He wanted to make the data public, but a few weeks after the interview, he disappeared from the public space. Now imagine if all these anomalies are not coincidences, but a signal of presence, of the existence of a structure, a civilization of beings who survived the catastrophe. Perhaps they themselves caused it. And now, silently watching. Because if thousands of frames contain incomprehensible objects, underground entrances, geometric shapes, and NASA has avoided direct comments for years, doesn't this mean that someone is carefully hiding something? And the scariest question is if they are still there, so what will happen when we get to them? There is one interesting fact that is not told in astronomy lessons. In 1984, a stone was found in Antarctica, black, similar to volcanic glass. Name, all 84,001. But its age is about 4 billion years. And its origin, isotope analysis showed it is a meteorite from Mars. It was thrown into space after an ancient impact on the red planet, and millions of years later it fell to Earth. And this is what was found inside: microscopic structures, like fossilized bacteria. In 1996, NASA officially stated there is a possibility that these are traces of extraterrestrial life. It would be the sensation of the century. But then, a sharp backlash. They say that the structures could have appeared chemically. But here's the detail. A study in 2011 again confirmed these forms have signs of biological origin. So we have a fragment of another planet with life forms, and at the same time, we don't talk about it openly. This is just the beginning. In total, more than 270 Martian meteorites have been found on Earth. And in almost every one of them, there are traces of complex organic molecules. But officially, this is not life, just chemistry. But how to explain that some of these structures have signs of symmetry or clear traces of mineralization created by bacteria? In 2003, researcher John Brandon published an article in which he directly called the structures in Martian meteorites artificial micro-objects that could be nanotechnology. The article was immediately removed from the archives. Brandon himself was expelled from the NASA Research Council a few months later. Coincidence? There is another case. In 2011, local shepherds in Yemen found a fragment of black stone after a fireball fell. At first, they thought it was just a meteorite. But the Massachusetts Institute of Technology laboratory, where the sample was delivered, confirmed that it was a sample of Martian basalt. And inside it are fragments of a structure similar to a silicon crystal with channels. That is a part similar to a microcircuit. Could this be a fragment of something artificial that was on Mars, or even a piece of technology? In 2020, a documentary film was released, filmed by an independent group of astrophysicists, where they stated some Martian meteorites have traces of exposure to temperatures over 500 degrees, but without typical signs of melting from contact with the atmosphere. That is, these could be the remains of an explosion or even the work of a reactor. And now the main thing. In several cases, these meteorites had remnants of radioactive isotopes that should not be found in nature under such conditions. Uranium-236, not of natural origin. And this can mean one thing: there could be nuclear energy on Mars. By the way, this idea was also expressed by physicist John Brandenburg. In his work, Death on Mars, he suggested there was a nuclear explosion on Mars, powerful and artificial. He provided evidence the content of isotopes in the atmosphere of the red planet coincides with the consequences of a nuclear explosion. His theory is that there was a war on Mars, and the civilization died as a result of self-destruction. Sounds shocking. But now look at the distribution of Martian ruins. The faces in Cydonia, pyramids, geometric objects, all on one hemisphere. The other is empty, burned, with a raised background, as if something had erased one half from the face of the planet with nuclear fire. And now, even more interesting, at one of NASA's press conferences in 2022, a journalist asked a direct question: is it possible that the studied meteorites contain artificial materials? And do you know what the agency's spokesman answered? We do not comment on unconfirmed information. Not a refutation, just silence. Now, imagine this. If some of this debris is indeed the remnants of technology, then it is already here on Earth in the hands of researchers. Maybe in private laboratories, maybe in DARPA projects or other defense agencies. And they are trying to understand it, reverse engineer it. This idea echoes the theory advanced by physicist Bob Lazar that the US government is researching alien technology in closed laboratories. Now imagine, if not from other stars, but simply from Mars, a neighboring planet. Let's get back to artifacts. In 2015, a team of researchers from the University of British Columbia received a Martian sample that contained an unknown form of quartz. This is not a natural structure, not something that forms under pressure. It had perfect symmetry. It could not be repeated in the laboratory. It could be a structural element, a memory crystal. But aren't there too many coincidences? There is a widespread belief among researchers that there is a group within NASA that has full access to forbidden footage. They receive photos before they are published, and they remove or correct those that contain potentially compromising evidence. This explains why many of the footage comes with a time lag, why hours have disappeared in telemetry, and why files are often published in very low resolution, although the cameras have much higher quality. There is a version that most of the real artifacts have long been collected from the first mission's Viking, Pathfinder, even from the Mars Global Surveyor probe, and all of this is deeply classified. Some researchers even believe that the first automatic missions had the task of not just taking pictures, but also removing objects from the surface. Imagine how this changes everything. We are not just exploring Mars, we are already in contact with its heritage. We are already working with its technologies, and maybe we've already figured something out. But we're not sharing because it's a weapon, advantage, control. But there's one problem. If we really have the remains of a lost civilization that had such power, are we ready to understand why they disappeared? In 2014, retired NASA engineer James R. published a shocking letter in which he stated that much of the data from Mars missions never reaches the public. According to him, there is a two-layer control system. What we see, and what the Deep Science Group sees an elite structure within NASA and JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, that processes real images, videos, and telemetry from Mars. As he wrote, "Curiosity is just a facade. We will never see the real research platforms. They have no official code. They are not registered in open archives, and they do not report to Congress." This letter was deleted from several major websites in a few hours. James himself disappeared. But a year later, a video appeared where a man in the shadows confirmed. Since the 1990s, NASA has had autonomous platforms in Mars orbit unregistered without broadcasts. Their task is to collect data, remove objects, and take detailed topographic surveys of places where anomalies were found. The so-called MANTA project, it was first mentioned in WikiLeaks leaks, where correspondence with Boeing mentions reconnaissance on M1 orbit, a term that researchers associate with deep orbit around Mars. The codename is also mentioned Athena Remote Platform. Officially, it does not exist, but in 2017, an object was spotted on telemetry from ESA cameras that was moving synchronously in Mars orbit but did not belong to any of the missions. Of course, this could be a coincidence, but such coincidences are becoming more and more common. In 2021, Perseverance sent a series of photos from the Jezero crater area. One of them shows a geometric object that looks like an antenna or satellite. But after 20 minutes, this photo was deleted from NASA's server. A few days later, another version was published, cropped, with a safe background. Those who follow NASA's public archives know several dozen photos disappear every week. Files change. They return already changed. And this is not a glitch. This is targeted censorship. There is another side. Insiders claim NASA is not an autonomous structure. It is under the control of the Pentagon. There is a special unit, the Office of Planetary Intelligence, OPI. It does not officially exist, but there are mentions of it in DARPA budget documents. OPI is engaged in the analysis of extraterrestrial structures and objects. And importantly, it provides closed reports not only to U.S. government agencies, but also to certain private corporations. One of such leaks occurred in 2019 when hackers from the Red Halo group posted fragments of internal reports. One of them refers to the detection of unnatural symmetry in the Argyre crater and structures with signs of internal voids and infrastructure footprints under a layer of regolith. If this is true, we are talking about entire cities hidden underground. NASA, of course, denied everything, but these are no longer isolated cases, and a stream. Even earlier, in 2009, the head of the Mars Observer Project, Gerald Thompson, said a phrase that was leaked into the recording at a closed conference for scientists. "We found more than we were looking for, and now we don't know what to do with it." And this is a key thought, because it turned out missions to Mars began to find objects that should not exist, namely symmetrical domes, hexagonal structures, deep tunnels, structures that have a precise location according to geodetic grids, like the pyramids on Earth. Remember Cape Sidonia, the same one where Face on Mars is located. Its coordinates are almost perfectly symmetrical, with a distance to other pyramids, craters, and roads. The geometry is like that of ancient complexes on Earth. Some researchers even tried to superimpose a map of the city of Teotihuacan in Mexico on the topography of Sidonia, and they were amazed they almost coincide. So, who builds structures in the same grid with the same geometry on different planets? Even more interesting, one of the missions received an infrared scan of the surface of the Elysium Planitia region. There, under the layer of Martian dust, a large circle is visible a diameter of more than 2 kilometers, and inside structures resembling an amphitheater. Someone called it an ancient complex, someone a portal, and someone a mine. And it was after this scan that the mission was prematurely terminated. NASA is silent, but former analyst John Kramer, who worked on the first Viking mission, said, "The most dangerous thing is not that we have found life, it is that we have found evidence of intelligence. And this intelligence is much older than humanity. If so, this is no longer just a scientific discovery. This is a civilizational explosion. This is an undermining of everything we know about history, about Earth, about humanity. That is why, according to Kramer, the Silence Group was created. This is an interagency structure operating under the umbrella of intelligence. Its task is to filter data, silence witnesses, destroy records that leak into the open network. A few famous examples. In 2004, the entire data archive from the Mars Polar Lander probe disappeared. The explanation is a technical error. In 2018, a NASA employee who worked on processing photos from Perseverance mysteriously disappeared. His computer was destroyed. In 2022, unknown people hacked the servers with the archive of Martian panoramas, and a week later they returned everything with keyframes already deleted. This is an information war for the truth, because the truth is scary, because the truth changes everything. But the most important thing is yet to come, because evidence is emerging that there is something active on Mars, that something is working there, and that they don't want to let people there. After decades of official research on Mars, every year it becomes more and more obvious that the planet is not just a dead desert. On the contrary, strange events are taking place there that do not fit into traditional ideas about the Red Planet. In one of NASA's largest scientific centers, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, famous engineers shared that zones of increased thermal activity were discovered under the surface of Mars. These zones are even recorded by orbiting satellites, but official reports call them geological anomalies. No one says that such heat can come from real working devices or systems. In particular, infrared sensors notice regular pulsations of heat in craters that look like ordinary Martian pits. But analysis of these signals indicates complex oscillations that are not characteristic of natural processes. This suggests that automated mechanisms or reactors operate under the surface, which operate for a long time without human intervention. Even more mysteries are created by the so-called Martian beacons objects that periodically emit radio waves or infrared light. In 2018, researchers discovered that these signals come from one of the large craters Gale, where the Curiosity rover is currently operating. Interestingly, these waves have a clear regularity and even change frequency depending on the season. Many scientists suggest that this could be a form of communication or power supply for an ancient network of underground complexes. Even more shocking, secret archives that have fallen into the hands of independent researchers talk about special missions that have never been announced to the public. For example, the Phobos Gate project is a mission that was supposed to explore one of the moons of Mars, Phobos. Although officially Phobos Gate was canceled, sources close to NASA claim that the mission was carried out in 2023 using an automatic probe that transmitted strange footage live. These footage showed fragments of metal structures that looked extremely modern and could not be natural. Some objects resembled the remains of a spaceship. After the publication of this data, the probe suddenly disappeared, and NASA officially stated that the transmission was interrupted due to technical problems. Also, in 2024, independent researchers found evidence that there may be remnants of automated production complexes on Mars resembling factories or plants that operated continuously thousands of years ago. Some researchers believe that these complexes are the remains of a technological civilization that existed long before humans appeared on Earth. In 2025, the scientific community was shocked when a group of astrophysicists published a paper about the discovery of strange electromagnetic anomalies in the Elysium Planitia region, which coincided with the geographical coordinates of ancient structures. The electromagnetic signals had signs of artificial origin and could indicate active devices or energy sources that are still working. It is clear that such discoveries pose a serious challenge to official science. Instead of acknowledging and explaining, NASA and other agencies avoid public statements, and all details quickly fall under the secret category. One theory, supported by many independent researchers, is that there is a network of hidden bases and systems on Mars created by extraterrestrial civilizations, or our ancestors, who were much more technological than we thought. Even more intriguing is the version that this network is still operating and even regulates the climate and geological processes on the planet, maintaining its suitability for future missions and colonization. According to some sources, NASA has a program codenamed Red Dawn, a plan to equip a secret expedition to study these objects and, possibly, establish control over them. This program has never been officially announced, but sources say that it includes the participation of private space companies that have their own interests in using Martian resources. The most interesting thing is that even some high-ranking NASA employees do not know about this Red Dawn, which emphasizes the level of secrecy. Thus, a completely different Mars opens up before humanity, not a merciless desert, but a planet that preserves traces of ancient technologies and even working systems that can radically change our understanding of the universe. And while official agencies are silent or deny such facts, more and more researchers are emerging trying to lift the veil of secrecy. We are standing on the threshold of a huge discovery. Will we dare to face the truth, or will we again remain captive to secrets and silence? After the discovery of potentially working systems on Mars, the question arises, who created them? Official science does not yet have an answer, but theories in the conspiracy research community are gaining popularity. Um, some believe that these are traces of an ancient Martian civilization that suffered a catastrophe or evolutionary decline, perhaps due to an environmental catastrophe or external intervention. Like Earth, Mars could have developed cities, infrastructure, and technology which remained in ruins. Others suggest that these complexes are the remains of extraterrestrial expeditions or colonies that worked on Mars long before the appearance of humans. According to this version, ancient aliens could have created a complex network of automated systems for life support, resource extraction, or research. Archaeological data, which is occasionally leaked from closed programs, indicates the existence of structures on Mars that resemble industrial complexes, ports, and even residential areas. These structures demonstrate an unusual level of precision and technological sophistication far ahead of modern terrestrial technology. Also, striking is the fact that some of these objects have self-healing properties. Their materials, according to reports, change their structure, heal damage, which hints at the use of nanotechnology or other processes that are incomprehensible to us. In addition, in recent years, cases of the appearance of anomalous objects on the surface of Mars that resemble drones or autonomous robots have been recorded. They seem to work in areas with ruins, checking the condition of the infrastructure. If so, then Mars is not a dead planet, but a place where technologies of the past live on, regardless of human presence. In light of these discoveries, the scientific community faces a dilemma: how to combine official science with facts that are more like science fiction. Even more puzzling is the fact that some researchers believe that these technologies were created not for Earthlings and not by humans. According to one popular hypothesis, this is the legacy of extraterrestrial intelligent beings who visited or colonized Mars in the past and left behind complex mechanisms that could help in the future development of other civilizations. Such a theory, although contrary to established ideas, has received support from many enthusiastic scientists who believe that modern science is not ready to accept the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. Hidden archives and leaks from NASA also hint that the agency knows more than it officially claims. In interviews published in alternative sources, several former NASA employees admitted that much of the expedition material is intentionally removed from public access. They point to the existence of special censorship programs that block any information that could cause panic or changes in worldview. Others are sure that behind these technologies is a global government of the planet which controls information and prepares humanity for the gradual disclosure of the truth. There is also evidence that experiments on terraforming and the creation of biospheres are taking place on Mars, which are not yet publicly announced. It is possible that the Martian ruins are part of a large project to create a colony or even a future home for humanity, which is looking for new horizons. So, Mars is not just an object to study, but a whole puzzle that contains answers to the most important questions about our origin and future. Entering a new era of space exploration, humanity is faced with a choice. Are we ready to learn the whole truth about Mars? Recent missions, such as the Perseverance Mars rover and the Ingenuity helicopter, have proven that technology can indeed penetrate the most secret corners of the planet. But is this just the tip of the iceberg? Independent researchers suggest that in the future there may be a major disclosure of information that will change our understanding of space. A few years ago, such ideas would have seemed like science fiction, but today we have irrefutable evidence of the existence of anomalies on Mars that are difficult to explain by ordinary natural processes. The world is on the verge of a revolution in knowledge about the universe, from the history of disappeared civilizations to the influence of extraterrestrial intelligence on our present. The question that many scientists and researchers ask themselves: will Mars become a new home for humanity, or will it remain a silent witness to the past? Official space agencies are already planning new missions to study the subsurface, its atmosphere, and possible signs of life in more detail. At the same time, increasingly bold projects are emerging, from private companies to international alliances that want to build the first permanent settlements. It is important to realize that the real challenges on Mars are not only technical barriers, but also the unknown risks associated with what lies beneath the surface. Perhaps these are the secrets that are kept under close guard because revealing the truth could change the balance of power in the world. We can only wonder whether we will find on Mars the keys to the answers to the eternal questions: where we came from, who we are, and whether we are alone in the universe. But the fact that Mars is more than just a planet is no longer in doubt. Our journey to the stars is just beginning, and Mars is the first step that can lead us to incredible discoveries. Friends, stories about ruins on Mars, hidden NASA missions, and mysterious technologies are not just fantasies, they are a challenge to our understanding of the world. And although many of these facts still remain mysteries, they open the door to the future where man can find answers to the most cherished questions. Are we ready to accept the truth that can turn everything we knew before? Will we be able to maintain peace and wisdom to move forward, not afraid of the unknown? If you are interested in continuing to follow these mysteries and learn more about the incredible, subscribe to the channel, like, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Remember that the search for the truth is our common journey, and each of you can become a part of this great story. Thank you for being with me. See you again on the channel.